Hello, welcome to the April 15th, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test to make sure everything is coming through as expected. Bear with me just for a second. All right, sounds like my monitoring computer is coming through fine. My name is Greg Undo. I'll be the host for the live stream today. If you have not attended a Club Cubase live stream, it is basically a Q&A session where users can ask questions either in the live chat field or by going and sending an email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. We'll try to get through all the questions in order as they were sent. And we'll try to get through all as kind of succinctly and completely as possible. So when asking questions, my ability to answer the questions in real time will soon be rendered impossible, but I will try to catch up. But if we don't see an immediate response to your question, if you could try to maybe refrain from asking the same question repeatedly, that just kind of slows down the whole process. When asking questions, if you could indicate which version of Cubase, whether it's version 10, 11, 12, or if you're running LEAI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, that would be helpful. And if you could indicate which computer platform you're running, if you're running on Mac OS or in Windows, that's also helpful information. We should have all of the topics covered in the live stream and available in an index pinned to the top of the comments field several hours after the completion of the live stream. And from there, we will also, if you wanted to search for previous questions that have been covered in other live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com. And from there, we could we want to give a special thanks to Jan from Stockholm for creating the Cubase Index site. Two people that serve as moderators who are volunteers, are not Steinberg employees. They just do it to make it a better community. I want to give special thanks out to Jazz Dude and to Agent K, and also an additional special thanks to Jazz Dude for compiling lots of information for in the Cubase Nation Discord. So with that, we will go ahead and dive into questions and get started. We hope everyone's having a good day. So we'll get started. I'm going to break out my chat from the side here on my comments computer, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so you see first question. Hi, Greg. I have Cubase 11 Pro, Windows 10, Dell XPS 9500 with two Thunderbolt 3 ports and one USB 3.1 Type-C port, Zoom UAC 8 USB 3.0 interface, and a Dell U3818DW USB-C monitor. I'm getting dropout crackling noise. I'm told the laptop's ports are maxed out bandwidth-wise, but isn't that what Thunderbolt is for? Is the only solution turning up the samples? Didn't completely fix it. Is there a setting I'm missing? So often, it could be, usually the first thing we would do in a situation like this is to make sure that that it sounds like you've already raised the buffer's size on the audio interface, but it could be a couple of things. And if you're on a Windows platform, there's a couple additional settings that you should try. One is to come over here, and when you go to the audio system, you'll make sure that you're running ASIO Guard and that Activate Multiprocessing is on. And then you'll see a little setting for use Steinberg audio power scheme. So make sure that you have that set. Depending on the video driver that's also driving your monitor, so Thunderbolt does have a lot of bandwidth, but that doesn't really matter if your audio interface is running on USB. You don't benefit from the bandwidth for Thunderbolt. So your Zoom interface is going to be a USB. So I think it's so you say it's a USB 3.0 interface. I know they have some some Thunderbolt interfaces. So, once you're running it in USB 3, it could be that it is not, so you don't get any of the benefits of Thunderbolt with that. You may get some more power handling, but, so connecting your USB 3 to a Thunderbolt computer, doesn't turn it into Thunderbolt. So make sure that you try like the power schemes, and it could be that, adjusting, with your display drivers. Often if it's an NVIDIA display driver, you could take it out of gaming mode and put it into I think there's a studio mode that will often kind of take off like a lot of the fancy gaming stuff. Sometimes doing adjusting the resolution on your display monitor. If you're running, you don't indicate if you're running like 4K or 5K on that, but those are some things that I would try. But it could be related to display driver. But one thing that could be interesting is if you route the audio directly in the ASIO driver section to somewhere other than your Zoom, maybe to an onboard audio, and then if that sounds clear as expected, that may be that your Zoom audio device isn't a good choice for that computer, or you may want to look at the Zoom update. So you should be able to either route the audio to the onboard audio interface or to an HDMI and see how that audio is playing back. And if that audio is playing back fine, then that would lead me to look into the Zoom audio interface. Okay. Okay, so we just see when I tried to remove noise in SpectralLayers, Cubase 1102 PC, I lose audio of the entire section as soon as I highlight the noise. What could cause this? Is there a remedy? So if I was doing like a noise profile in SpectralLayers, the approach that I would take is, let me just start a new project here. And let me just import a noisy audio file. So I'm not sure if you've created like a noise kind of profile where you kind of sample the noise. So let's go ahead and okay, so let's say we have a bit of a noisy audio file. So, what I would do is as we come here, we'll go to our SpectralLayers, and we could do it on the level, or if you could launch it as an extension. So now as we double click, we can come over, let's run this in kind of full screen. So let's say, so I would do, so, the noise will, we could come over here and just say, I want to select this. And then when we go to process, you want to basically, let's see if it's under noise reduction. And then you want to register the noise profile first. And then once you register the noise profile, then you could filter it out based upon the noise profile right there. So make sure that you're actually, registering the noise profile, because if you don't do that and then you kind of turn on denoising, it's not looking for particular frequencies or particular patterns, audio patterns, to actually take off the particular noise profile, and it may just take the whole file out. So make sure that you try that. Okay. Let's go to the next question. All right, so we see Benny from Sweden. Also, if you're watching this live, make sure that you say hi and tell us that where you're from. Okay, so you see I downgraded to Cubase 10 Pro on the Windows 8.1. Still can't find Groove Agent or Hallion SE3. So I think when we do Cubase 10, it was all in one particular file. So let me just come over to the download manager here quickly. Over to the download assistant. Okay, I'll just cancel this out. So when you go to install, let's see if 10 is on here. So like when you go to install Cubase 10, you want to make sure that everything is installed. So sometimes people will just download maybe just the 10.05 update, and that will install like the application, but it won't necessarily install all of the content. So Sable, when you're doing this, make sure that you're actually installing all of the content here as well in this 21.5 gigabyte download. And that should include everything that's in your Cubase 10. So sometimes people will, when they're downgrading, not necessarily, they'll install the application, but not all the content with it. So let us know. All right, so we see Jason Sykes is camping in North Yorkshire, and he's checking out the chat. So thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoy your camping trip. And we have Stefan checking in from Sweden. All right, so we have Masters Ari checking in from Tanzania. Thanks for joining, being a part of the community today. Okay, so we see a question from Jay from Connecticut. Hi, Greg. When watching the Nuendo 12 video, I saw a headphone correction plugin. Is there any way to find out which headphones will be supported? So I'm sure that once the Nuendo 12 is released, we could see the supported headphones directly in there. If you want to send me a particular headphone that you want to check, I could probably check and get back to you. If you wanted to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, so we see another question from Jay. It says, having purchased Nuendo 10 and 11, it feels odd, like oversight error, that we not see pre-sales discounts. Wire sales only being shown for those with Nuendo 10 or less seems dissonant. So I think we talked about this a bit on the last Zoom meetup, but it's hard to have a promotion for a product that's not available for sale yet. So, take a look at and we wanted to make sure that some people who were, at Nuendo 10 or earlier could upgrade and maybe take advantage of a grace period. So Steinberg was generous in kind of sharing that information, but there could be different promotions once Nuendo 12 is available for sale. All right, so we have a question. Is there a quick way to strum MIDI notes? So an easy way of being able to take MIDI notes, and if you wanted to create kind of a strumming pattern, so let's say if we have some maybe like a block chord, All right, so let's say if I have maybe a chord like this. So if you just wanted to grab what they call the trim tool and hold down kind of the Alt or Option key as we just come here, you could then just kind of create different kind of strumming patterns quite easily. So, and you could change kind of the spacing between them. So if you wanted to just show this. So if I wanted to change the angle of it, we could just, again, come here, make it more of a strum. So hold down the Alt or Option key, and then you'll be able to come here and just say, okay, I want it to be very tight, or I want it to be spread out over longer periods of time. So whatever angle you kind of put it in, you could just take a look at it like so. So try the trim tool. All right, and we have Tim from Mission Viejo checking in. Thanks for joining us. All right, and Peter's just saying much respect to all of the moderators. Thank you for all you do. So that's a great sentiment to pass along. Okay, so I just see a question, when to upgrade for AXR4T. So if you can still find it, AXR4T, it's a great interface. Due to different, parts availability issues, they're no longer manufacturing it. It'll still be supported for a long time, but just be aware of that it may be hard to find as it is the different components. A lot of people may not know this, but one of the big suppliers of audio interface conversions, had a factory fire a while ago. So, and they haven't been able to rebuild since their fire, I believe. Okay, so we see from Sean, Greg, still not sure how to remove certain notes from recordings using SpectralLayers 8. So generally, it's like not necessarily removing certain notes, but it's going to be more kind of frequency based. So if I wanted to come over to, let's say my audio menu, and if I, so it's not necessarily going to say, remove all C sharps 3. But as we want it to come over here, you could choose your different frequencies and harmonic overtones if you wanted to using that. So once we're here, we could see if we wanted to kind of adjust a view, so this is almost like taking the audio waveform kind of on its side. And, the frequencies that we see up top are going to basically be, so if we were to kind of keep going this way, we would see the waveform. But now what we're doing is we're looking at the particular frequency. So you could have, various tools for selecting the particular frequencies, but it's not going to be, where you could say, remove only C3s from this particular section. You could find those particular notes, listening to it, and auditioning different areas, but that's how it would kind of work. All right, we see John Costigan on the live stream, so from Kenosha, and we see Marcos Gomez on as well. And we see Luca from Munich. All right, we have Juha from Finland. Thanks for joining us. So you just see from Mark Davenport, hi Greg, Cubase 11 Pro crashes when I try to change the password for the SKI remote. Also Cubase IC Pro's keyboard crashes the app. Any workarounds? So I haven't had any problems. I don't have my iPad charged up to test, but if you wanted to email me, but I haven't had any problems with using the IC Pro with that. But if you want to email me, I'll be happy to check and see if I get it installed for Tuesday's live stream. All right, we see John Koskin might be getting his computer back. He was having different problems with it, so. All right, so we have a question. Greg, please, can you show how setting meter colors? All right, so if you wanted to change the colors of various meters, and let me go ahead and just switch my audio connections here. Okay, that's all good still. We'll go to your preferences, and then what we want to do is you'll see I think there's a metering appearance, and at this point we could change and have different metering appearances for the different meters. But what you could do here is say, okay, when this meter is at minus 12 dB, I want it to be, and you could double click right here, I want it to be this color. At minus 6 dB, I want it to be, blue. And, so we could just kind of come over here and at this point, just kind of change the different meter scales. And if we wanted to add one, I think we could just click the Alt or Option key and say, I want this to be more pink at that scale. So at that point, you can just kind of change the meter colors. And again, you could do this for each of the different meter types. So you can go, I have some very high profile audio engineers, when musicians are not getting their parts, will sit there and make meter colors to pass the time. So, but that's how you could change the meter colors. Okay, reading through comments. My chat field just jumped on me, so let me just. All right, so I just see further clarification for the SpectralLayers issue, not using denoise, selecting a bump noise. So, while you do, so if I kind of remember the question, let's say if I just come over to, so if it's only playing that particular noise, sometimes when you select a noise, frame, it may only play that particular noise or that particular selection while it's selected. So maybe if you select the noise print and register the noise, otherwise sometimes you could select just noise print, and that will just kind of loop infinitely because that's what you're auditioning and that's what you're selecting with. All right, and we have Graver Larson checking in from Germany. Thanks for joining. Okay, so we have a question from Perry Michael Allen. Why can't you export with NX headphones enabled? So I'm not sure what the NX headphones is. Is that like a headphone correction plugin or something like that? And I'm not sure if if it's a real time process. Maybe if you could let me know what the NX headphones are. That could help me, Perry. Sorry about my ignorance. All right, we have Frank Frenzy checking in from Canada. Sean from Greenwich, Connecticut. All right, so Sven Isaacson says Wednesday wasn't only the day the Atmos update was released, it was also his birthday. Perfect gift. Thanks, Steinberg. Well, happy belated birthday, Sven, and I hope you're enjoying the new functionality. All right, so I see a question. Greg, I spend hours and hours in front of my computer with Cubase. What is the time limit so as not to get too tired? Can you give me a schedule to follow, please? Some people I've seen some people work, like when I watch my wife work, she could be incredibly focused and almost in like a trance, and I'll come up and I could have a conversation with her and she doesn't hear me until, like she gets to like a breaking point. So some people can work for hours and hours and hours. I think it could be more of, maybe an individual setting. So, I think some people I know will, go by like the little fitness tracker on their watch. Like, okay, you've been sitting for an hour, get up and walk 30 steps or something just to have some activity. So maybe if you do something like that, but, there's always a point of diminishing returns when you've been working for a long time. When I was younger, I could remember doing, I remember one project and it was, I think we did 36 hours straight of mixing just because, we could get the studio time cheap for the project. And, we got it done and everything turned out great somehow. But, it's kind of up to, how far you think when you think you're, starting to fade, or you think that, maybe you're not making the best decisions mix wise, and go outside and walk around, put on some other music, listen, read a book, do something for 5 minutes, get out of your chair, stuff like that. And we did have a bit of a discussion. I think Michael Pierce started this like a discussion on what do you do when you're in one of our Zoom meetups a couple months ago, kind of about this particular topic. So maybe other people could give some insights on what they do. All right, so we have Neil Conway checking in from Arizona. Thanks for joining us. And Jazz Dude wants me, and he's just mentioning, I see, and I'll mention as well, that there was a maintenance update that was released on Wednesday. So make sure you get that. That's going to be the Cubase 1201, which is going to come with the Dolby Atmos and multi-freeze. So make sure you do that. I couldn't tell you on Tuesday, but I told you it would be coming soon. All right, and we have Polymath18 saying hi. It's the first time watching from South Africa. So thank you for joining the live stream, and please feel free to ask any questions that you might have. And we hope to see you on future live streams. Okay, so I just see, hi Greg, I created a remote MIDI device, but I did it wrong, and now I want to remove it. I don't know how to remove it from the lower section MIDI remote. Okay, so let's say if I came here and I wanted to remove a particular MIDI remote, all you'd have to do is just come right over here. We could click on, so let's say if I have this, let's go to the setup window here, and then we could select the particular remote control. And as we want to do this, you'll see remove controller surface, and just click right there on the little trash can icon, and I believe that will delete it for you. So give that a shot. We see John Koskin on our concept of combating fatigue, just saying a 15-minute break every 2 hours will let your ears relax. And I think one other trick I've seen many people do, like wonderful engineers, is, you know, they mix it very, you know, like low volume, and they find that they are kind of more actively listening for that instead of you know, if you find yourself kind of turning the volume up, that may be a good time to take a break. All right, so we see question. Hi, Greg. I've been having issues with my double click on Cubase 11s. It's supposed to open editor's page double clicking, but it works 1 and 10. Like, it's very hard for me to open editor pages. So I think what most people have done to resolve that is going to be, it seems a bit odd, but maybe a display driver. So, you know, check your display drivers. And if it's in gaming mode, try to put it, like if you have an NVIDIA, try to do that. Also check to see if you're on a Windows platform, if we go to the preferences, and you'll see on the Windows platform under general, like use high DPI, and see if you actually, once you if you toggle that, if that makes a difference. And that would, but usually it's going to be the display driver, which may not be the first thing you think, oh, maybe it's my mouse, but often it could be a display driver issue that's causing that. All right. All right. So I see a question for MIDI remote on buttons. If we could change the font size, it'd be a great thing, as it's too hard to read. So, you know, if we are, you know, creating buttons quickly, let me just see if I quickly get my MIDI remote connected. One of mine here. Sorry, I had to change a bunch of things right before the live stream started. Let me see. But let me just see if we can do that. But, you know, realize that you could always, you know, once we have our control set up, let me just. All right, my Nectar controller is not going to cooperate today. Hang on. Sorry, it's taking a little bit. Let me just see if I get this router connected. Just rebooting my controller. All right, so, but try, so it's not cooperating today, but let me just, if we come, we'll just navigate quickly to home. So let's say if we have buttons, you know, you could put in, like, you know, various buttons here. So let's say if we go to the surface editor, so even if you don't see this, let's say if we blow it up, you could zoom in and out of the surface, you know. So if you wanted to, you know, quickly kind of zoom in into the particular editor, but as you go to add a particular button, you know, you could resize each of these buttons as well, so to make them more legible with that. But a lot of times, you know, once you have something that is connected, if you just go directly to your setup and hit the button, it'll automatically show you the function in the list. And you don't have to be in a MIDI remote editor. You could just go to the mapping assistant here and then hit the particular parameter, and then you could see it automatically indicate here in the list of what the parameters are as well. All right, so just see, so question, I'm still having an issue where I can't say presets in Beat Designer. Should I reinstall Cubase 12? I think we discussed this a bit on the last live stream. So one of the things that you might want to try is as you start Cubase, you could hold down Alt Control Shift or Command Option Shift, and it'll give you the option, and just like double click on a program and then hold down those modifier keys, again, Alt Control Shift or Command Option Shift, and hold those down, and then you'll have the option to run the program with the preferences disabled. So try that and see if that makes a difference. And then what I would do is maybe choose to delete the preferences. If that works, I would choose to delete the preferences, and then you should be all set. But there you see Capital Razors wishing a happy Easter to everyone. So we hope everyone that's celebrating Easter has a wonderful celebration with their friends and family. We see Sable Winters wishing Polymath 18, just saying he's in for a treat. So, and she's reminding me to hit the like button. So if you learn something new or want to support the live streams, please hit the like button. It's always makes it easier for us to continue to do these. Okay, so we have a question I see from Michael or Mikkel. Can you show how to edit comp multi-drums tracks on multi-lanes? Okay, so let's say if I have all of these particular tracks laid out for me here. See if I have something that's Just gonna do this with another project here. My mouse is acting weird. Hang on. Just going to restart my Cubase here real quick. Bear with me just a second. It's like a remote control is activated or something somewhere. All right, so we'll just kind of do a quick, like if we're comping drums. All right. So let's say I had a number of drum tracks, and what I want to do, I'll duplicate versions. Okay, so let's say I have 4 different drum takes. So a lot of times, you know, I may use track versions, but if you want to do comping, I'll show you the trick with this. I'll come over here to my track versions, and I'm going to turn these, we're going to create lanes from versions. All right, so let's say now if I wanted to see, I have, you know, multiple lanes here, let's say for different versions. And if I wanted to comp these, all I'd really have to do, I'll just close my lower zone. One of the tricks that you could do that's not immediately obvious is to say, okay, I want to close my lanes. And as you listen to the different ones, you want to just put them all into a folder track. And then we could enable group editing on the folder track. So once I now open up the lane view, I could grab the comping tool and I could say, okay, I just want that lane there. So let's say if this was my comp between different performances, at that point, all of those edits that we've done will now be, we could apply those to all of the different lanes as we open them up. So we could open up the lanes. So if we have all the lanes open, at this point, we could just say with the comp tool, okay, I want to select those different performances, and we could now just do comping across multiple tracks, but make sure that you have them in a folder and that you have all the lanes are visible, and that you now just come over and at that point just use the comp tool, and then as you do the comping on one, it's going to be applied to all the open tracks. All right, so I just see from Lucas Jr. Studios says, I don't understand why nobody talks about this Cubase issue on Windows 10 as well as Mac. It's really annoying. Can't open editor's page the first time. Must double click many times. So let's go ahead and take a look. So let's say if I wanted to open like this, you know, if you wanted to, let's say, have a MIDI part. So let's see if I'm misunderstanding. Let me just switch tools. Okay, so let's say we're in a mix console, and if we wanted this to go directly to a different editor when we double click, I think if we just go to their preferences, And let's go to editors, and we can say double click, editor opens in a window. So if I now hit apply, I can just, so say if I'm in the sample editor, I could double click and now it's in the sample editor. Or if I'm in a MIDI editor, I could just double click. Let's say we have the mix console active in the lower zone. Now I could double click and it will open up into a full screen editor. So let me know if that's what you're talking about. And again, that preference is just found under editors. And then double click opens editor in either a window or the lower zone. So let me know if that's helpful. So it doesn't have to be a two-step process. All right, so we have weekend. We have weekends, just checking in from Los Angeles. Thanks for being part of the live stream. All right, so we see, hi Greg, any tips for doing a tempo detection on something like a guitar vocal ballad with a lot of natural tempo variation, but not much rhythmic content? So like, I may not have a good example, but let's say if I have like maybe a classical thing, let's see if I wanted to do more of a classical type of thing that's not so rhythmically stable or obvious. I'll take that Mahler piece that we were using before. Okay, so it's even with noise in the file. So let's come over here and do a quick tempo detection. So let's do an offbeat correction. So if you notice that it's, why the program will open up sometimes in, with the, what we call the tempo warp tool active is at this point, it opens up into this editor and you can say, at this point I want it, when we're at this particular bar, I could just say, okay, I want to move this measure, just based on, so let me go ahead and close this. So now, once we have, our tempo events that we could just kind of draw in and adjust our tempo here using the tempo warp tool. So at that point, you can make little tweaks and modifications on the tempo editor. So you could just say, okay, I just want this, to be moved here. I want this beat here. So you could do that very kind of easily. So once you're done the tempo detection, you could just switch directly over to, and you could go to like the warp grid, and then you could just say, this is where measure 23 falls. This is, and you could do refinements from that point and just be able to, refine the tempo detection to match, you could say, okay, measure 23 actually comes right here. And you could kind of manually make adjustments. And if you did it right after the tempo detection, it will then do an analysis at that point afterward. So give that a shot in actually using kind of the tempo warp, the warp grid functionality. So. All right, you see Joe Owens just says, thanks for all the effort you put into the live streams. You're welcome. I just hope it's helpful for people. And Nick is just reminding people that the like button won't smash itself. All right. All right, so we see hi from Cyprus. Is there a way to use VST Connect for music technology online lessons? Thanks. VST Connect, the intention is really to do remote collaboration with it. So, so while you can stream the audio to someone that's using VST Connect Performer, you can get the audio out, but it's probably easier to use a tool where it's set, if you needed to share your screen and be able to communicate. VST Connect isn't set up, or it's not intended to be like a Zoom or Team Viewer where you can share your screen and do presentations. It's really more for remote learning. Or not remote learning, but remote recording from different musicians. All right, so we have Crocante from Los Angeles. Thanks for being on the live stream today. So you just see, hi, Greg, I would like to master the mixing in Cubase. Can you advise me on books to buy or paid tutorials? So I know when the new mixer came out, I think it was in Cubase 7. That was in, I guess, about almost 9.5 years ago. So 2012 when it came out, or 2013. I guess it was 2012. At that point, if you look, I did about 30 minutes of videos on the mix console. It's mostly the same. There's some little changes, but I would watch those videos for like, the new mix console in Cubase 7. And there's probably many other tutorials. I don't think that you would need to purchase anything. I think there's a wealth of wonderful information on YouTube that you could learn pretty much everything you can do. All right, we see Gerald Ely. So I'm glad you can make it today. He's in California, I believe. So I see a question. Hi, Greg. I have an issue with Cubase 12 adding gain at some point to my audio path / chain. Example, using native, the signal is more distorted than when I launch Helix native in a standalone VST wrapper. All right, so I'm not sure if you're Lawrence, if you're running it in a wrapper of some kind. So just. All right, so one thing to check if you're running it versus standalone, if you notice kind of a difference in gain, one thing to check, could be dealing with, I don't think it's going to be altering the gain, but check if you go to your project setup, check your actual, the pan law settings, and that may affect it kind of audibly depending on your pan law. So try various pan law settings, but there's nothing, unless you've adjusted the input channel, or if you have your track volume set to something other than 0 dB, Cubase won't be adding or subtracting gain from your signal. But make sure that your track is set here. Also, it could depend on if you have a particular effect. If it's set up as an insert, you could have it pre-fader or post-fader. So if you're If the audio, if the fader for the particular channel that you're running the plugin on is not set to 0 dB, that could have an effect as well. So check those things out. All right, we see Matthew Elston from London checking in. We have Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. And thanks for joining us. And I believe, he already wants people to whack the like button. So I believe that it will be special Friday afternoon ice cream virtual delivery from Michael Teams. It's always a joy. He's so creative with his flavors. All right. All right, so I just see a question, Greg. I would like to install Cubase Pro 12 on my second machine. How do I go about it, please? So all you have to do is just simply install the program and then go to the Steinberg Activation Manager and then activate the second computer. So that's really all you have to do. All right, so we see Uno Memento on the live stream, so thanks for joining us. I see Richard James from France, and he's happy he's having a meal in a restaurant with no masks. And it feels like it was 2.5 years ago. It feels like it's back to the old normal, so it's great. Okay, so just see a question from Arthur or Asher Albert. Just says, hi, Greg, I'm having a problem when I put a jazz song on a MIDI track that doesn't read some of the A chords correctly. It is because of the complexity of the chords. What's the solution? Okay, so I guess is it because of the complexities of, I guess, putting a jazz piece, jazz song on a MIDI track, it doesn't read some of the chords correctly? Is it because of the complexities of the chords? What's the solution? So once you've done kind of a tempo detection, or I'm sorry, like if you're doing a chord detection, really, once we have a chord track, I'll just come over here. Let me just, sorry about that. Let me just open up a different project that has a chord track already in. It may make more sense. Obviously with chords, there could be a lot of different interpretations. So, when you come up here, let's say to the chord track itself, and depending on, what you're actually, so sometimes as you're doing this, is it, as we get into more complex chords, you realize that you could say, is it, there's a certain amount of interpretation, even, looking at the same chord. Like, would you say, okay, it's going to be an F? Would you say it's going to be like maybe an F with an A in the bass? So let's say if we do something like this, but is that really, you could interpret this chord different ways. So you may have to just kind of go through and tweak some of the changes if it's not what you intended. And sometimes, different chord voicings, depending on what you have selected, like if you just do piano and then the bass plays a note, the bass could change the chord. That's what everyone is reading, but the piano may not be playing all of the voices of the chord. So depending on the particular situation, you may have to go through and actually define the chords. So if you haven't done all of the parts, because it could be the piano player's not playing every voice in the chord, or you may want it to be interpreted other ways. So you could say, I want it, that chord. So, or if you want it to be like an F over A, or if you want it to be like an A6 chord, you could, have different interpretations of the same chord. So you may have to just kind of tweak whatever the analysis is. And, you could often take the same pieces of music and have people analyze it and come up with different chords, and they could both be right. So. Okay, so I see a question from Heliocentric. How to trim the beginning of one clip and the end of the other clip at the same time if you have selected two clips on different tracks, like moving a crossfade just on different tracks. Okay, so I think if we have this, we could probably set up, maybe a remote control. But often, so let me just create this. See if duplicate this track. All right, so I guess you wanted to take the end, of two different clips, so generally, I guess you could lock a particular parameter to a quick control setting and have two knobs be able to adjust that. But, a lot of times many of the functions will be kind of for one particular function at a time, but you could, lock different functions here. So let's say if I put these into quick controls that you might be able to, but in the long run, if you wanted to do something that's like a crossfade, is why not just actually just do a crossfade on it? So you could do that as well, but you could lock different parameters. Let me just turn off one preference here for delete overlaps. So let's say if we come here, so if we wanted to, it's probably many controllers won't be able to kind of transmit different things, but let's say if I wanted to so I think probably the best solution would be, just to actually do a crossfade. So I'm not sure if they need to be on different tracks or, so, but if you could let me know if there's a particular reason that they need to be on different tracks, or if you wanted to just come here. Also, one of the things you could do is select the range here and then hit the letter A, and that will do just like a fade in, fade out on the overlapping range. So if you wanted to adjust that, and then you could edit the fades if you wanted to as well. So if we wanted to have these on different events and you want to kind of function like a crossfade, just hit the on different tracks, then hit the letter A, then this one, the end of the clip will fade out and this one will fade in. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, wonderful to see Walter Blackledge from our St. Louis Club Cubase. Thanks for joining us today. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Why can I only see my external effects on audio track but not on an effects track? Doesn't appear in the drop-down list for the effects track, but it does on the audio track. Have I not set something up correctly? Well, generally, so let's say if we have an external effect, so I'll add and let's say an effect channel, and I'm going to come over to an external plugin. So let's say, okay, we have distressor. All right, so here is the return channel of that. So I'm just going to reread it. So, you know, and it could be that it doesn't show up because there's no, you know, when you go to the inserts, we'll see our external effect here. So let's say if I wanted to come here, if I wanted to add another external plugin, let's say if I had it connected, so let's say I have a PZM 42. So we could, you know, it seems like the, so this is an effects track, and I could see the, you know, under the inserts, we could see the external effects there. So let me know if I'm misunderstanding. It's from Richard James. Okay, so we have a question. I don't see the button for lanes on my inspector. Simple fix. All you have to do is right click on the track and go to track control settings. And then you may notice that you'll have lane display type. If you see it in the hidden controls, select it and then click add, and then it will become available right there. So again, right click, go to select your track control settings. And if you see anything that's in the hidden controls, select it, and then you could add it to the visible controls. So you should be like 3 mouse clicks away from happiness. Okay, so just see from Oren Bynum, Greg, how can I keep hearing the sounds when I tried to make harmony voices using the Very Audio scale assistants? Still haven't gotten that to work. Explain again. Explain again, please. All right, so. All right, so let me just go to project here. I think what Oren may be describing is kind of maybe duplicating the track and doing harmony voices. So I'll get this project open.
Now you're packing boxes ready to leave. Our musical history laid out on the floor. I've got to choose what's mine and what's yours. 'Cause now you're asking Beatles or Stones. Something about that just.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate this track here. Okay, so we'll choose to, and let me know if I'm kind of going down a wrong path for you, Oren. So I'll just duplicate this track. All right, and what I want to do now is I'm going to turn this into a separate audio file. So I'm going to go to audio and bounce selection and replace the event. And at this point, what I want to do, so this is a separate file. I could go into my Very Audio editor. So double click and let's go to my edit Very Audio. We go to our scale assistant. So it's going to do its analysis here. So we'll say we're going to use the chord track.
Now you're asking Beatles or Stones.
So let's say now if I wanted to take this, which was a double track, make sure that you have this icon active. So you may not hear the notes as you move it. You know, so now as I move notes, I don't actually hear it, but as soon as I come and enable the acoustic feedback Oren, so I'm going to move it to a different pitch that's green, and we see green, that means it's in the chord.
Now you're asking Beatles or Stones.
So let's say, okay, I'll move it down.
Now you're asking Beatles or Stones.
So you could do stuff like that, and we could adjust the formants if we wanted to. But if you're not hearing it, try just to make sure that you have this enabled right there. So the acoustic feedback. So. All right, so a question from Marcos. Glad you could be on the live stream today. Does WaveLab be okay for audio restoration like RX or acoustic Premium 7 for enhancing audio, or really more about mastering music for future possibility to newer things about it? So yeah, WaveLab definitely has wonderful restoration utilities. I can remember seeing a documentary, and it was just a gentleman that I've helped out over time would call me up periodically. His name is Pete Reiniger, and he's won all sorts of Grammys for Smithsonian Folkways. And he was doing a project in the United States for Smithsonian, and he worked at Library of Congress, and they were doing kind of all of their restoration work in WaveLab for that. So you could use it for mastering music and for audio restoration. So it's used for all sorts of forensic audio purposes. And I've been to many kind of U.S. government facilities, from, different intelligence agencies, and even like Naval Research Lab, who used it for analyzing sonar. So again, WaveLab's been used for a lot of very heavy duty restoration tasks. All right, so we have Will Ramos asking, is there a way to record in Cubase and at the same time stream with OBS without a feedback on channels 1 and 2? So it could depend on your audio interface. Like I'm using a Steinberg UR24C, and with this interface, we could enable a function of the interface called loopback. So that will allow you to stream and record in. So let's say if I just want to come over here to my DSP mix effects, and not all interfaces have this, so it's really kind of up to the audio interface. But if we could just come over here, we could just do loopback and enable that, and that would allow you to do it. So it's really more of a function of your audio interface if it does that. And there are some utilities where you could kind of take the signal out. And what I do for like this stream is actually just have a separate USB mixer, that the audio is being sent out to, and that's a USB mixer, and then I use that for the stream and use my audio interface for Cubase. So it's really just kind of a functionality of your audio system, of your audio interface if it does that. So if it has loopback, you'll probably be in good shape. All right, so Michael Pierce is able to join us from outside London, and we'll let you slip since it's Good Friday, so no tardy slip today. All right, but you never have to worry about showing up late. We're just happy you could join us, Michael. Hope you're doing well. All right, so I see a question from Richard James. I've used tempo detection on a track in which should have been a steady beat, but it shows fluctuations due to fills, etc. Is it possible to reduce the sensitivity to give a more accurate value? So a lot of times when you're doing the tempo detection, that's doing it based on the beat. And, people will see, oh, there's fluctuations. And I got into kind of one time, showing this with one of the guys in Steely Dan. You told me that, Hey 19 was perfect because they used an early drum machine and the tempo was perfect. And then we did an analysis of it, and he's like, oh, it wasn't perfect. And stuff that is, you think is a totally steady beat that's programmed, like a lot of early MIDI stuff that you think was, heavily quantized, it is fluctuating. And, often what you do is, when you have a groove, when you have a fill, the musicians will speed up and slow down. And that's pretty normal. If you want it, so the tempo detection will, be pretty accurate. But if you want it to kind of minimize tempo changes, if you have a number of different values in a tempo change, so let's say if we have our tempo track active, and let's say, okay, I had all of these different values here. What you could do is select, if you kind of draw from the bottom, select, and then we could just choose to compress or expand kind of the different contents like that. But often stuff that seems like it should be very steady actually isn't. And, Cubase could show that to you. And when you listen to it, you go, oh, it is fluctuating, and I thought it was steady. So I just see a question. I would like you to please show me how to use OBS for my tutorials. So, I mean, if you want to email me, I could do that. But, what I do for, my tutorials, I use ScreenFlow. But I think if you go to OBS, and I'm not an OBS expert by any means, but you could set up, and I don't want to screw up this stream, but you could add, like, the computer audio, the computer display, and if you have another source for a microphone, and be able to capture that. The one thing I don't like about doing tutorials in OBS personally is, you then have to take it into another editing software to do edits and put maybe like a little title card on or something like that. But I could, teach you more about Cubase, but, that's what I would do for OBS tutorials. So. All right, so we see from FabGM says, "Hey guys, finally transitioned to Windows, upgraded to C12, and never been so productive and inspired again. The new Verve piano is really great." So that's great. We're glad you feel that way. Thanks for sharing your perspective. All right, so I see Benny says, "Fishy, my question has disappeared twice now, so I don't think I've seen it, but if you send it over again, I'd be happy to keep my eyes out for it." All All right, so we see Michael Teams has granted my family and myself 1 gallon of fresh Hawaiian pineapple ice cream. So thank you. Yeah, it'll give us some. I'll eat it while listening to Hawaiian music to get into the spirit. So it's very generous. Okay, so we have a question. Is there any way you can lower the MIDI block / audio waveforms brightness in the automation lane? All right, so when we come here, we could see our automation lane here. So if we wanted that to be more, to change that, let me just, I don't know way off the top of my head, but let's take a look and see. If we come here, maybe under event display audio. I don't think that these will have an effect on the automation. Now just on the events themselves. So I don't know of a setting for that. Let's see if that makes any difference. So I think it's just the settings are going to be just for the actual audio events and not in the automation areas itself, but I'll pass that along. All right, so we see, hello, Greg. Can you show question? Can you show how to duck a vocal track with a music track? Thanks. So let's say, okay, so I'll take this. Let's say we have vocals here, and I probably destroyed my song here. I'll revert this. Okay, so just to do like ducking, so let's say if I wanted to duck the acoustic guitars with the vocals, so often you may duck the instruments, but you know, I'll come here, let's say I will take my guitars and vocals here. So I'll just run these into a group quickly. We don't necessarily have to, but since I have multiple tracks. Okay, so if I wanted the guitars to duck as soon as the vocals come in, so say I have this going on. So I'm gonna put a compressor here. So we'll go to our dynamics and we'll activate our sidechain. And now we're going to tell it to, let's do this, like maybe we'll tell it to go to the vocal tracks here. And I'll do kind of a heavy. So it seems like this should be. All right, so we have this track, and I'm just going to check it sends. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to come over here and adjust the sidechain input. So now as we play. So the guitars will just kind of duck down whenever the vocals come in.
is okay. Guess all along.
All right. So my Mac is not cooperating well today. It's giving me fits before, so. Probably come back, but I'll just do that, be quicker. So that's how you could so you could apply the ducking on one particular, apply a compressor, and then you could duck, and you could do the opposite way if you wanted to duck the vocals every time a actual track comes in. Most people want the vocals to be ducking other tracks, so. All right, so let's go through our next question. Thanks for all the great questions. So I just see, hi Greg, is there an update about disabling all read automation, the green R tracks for tracks without automation, without clicking on them one by one, using the project logical editor or in another way? So I don't think that's been changed. It may not be the highest priority because if you have automation going on tracks that are not read, that are read enabled, it doesn't add, there's no consequence to it. So I don't think, I passed it along, but, I could see where on the list of priorities, it may not be the highest priority, but I'll make sure to reiterate it again. All right, we have Mitch Michelle checking in from Michigan. Thanks for joining. All right, so we have a question. Hey, Greg, I just updated Absolute 5, but cannot successfully download the base VST. It keeps failing, asking me to retry. Is there any other way to download without using the Steinberg downloader? So let's see if we could just get it from, sometimes there's often just kind of a website. So let me just say, so we'll look at it over here. Let's see if there's, see if we go to downloads. Sometimes there may be a separate page for this. See if it's maybe in here. All right, let's see if we can come over to, since it's in Absolute 5. So it looks like maybe it's just going to be there. But one other thing that you could probably do is, let's say, another way to try it might be to, let's go to the download assistant here quickly. And, you know, there's probably a separate download area for the electric bass. So under instruments, so let's come over here. So let's go to VST instruments and plugins. So maybe instead of just the absolute 5, maybe if you come to just the electric bass here, maybe that would be helpful for you, just to download it directly from there. If you still have problems with it, I may be able to put it on like an FTP server for you if you want to email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de. So we have a question: does Cubase benefit from the Intel i9 processor instead of i7, and from 64 gigabytes of RAM instead of less? So yes, definitely. So the faster processor you have, the faster clock speed, the more RAM you have, those are all good things. Cubase will take advantage and be able to utilize all of the extra power that you have. And if you have like maybe a very first generation i9, you know, there may be an i7 chip that's faster now, several years later. But, you know, it'll definitely, in my studio, I personally run an i9 computer, and the computer I'm doing the live stream on is an i9 as well. So. So I see question, after the update, some of my MIDI remote assignments are no longer working, like click level, for example. Are you seeing this? Are you seeing that this is happening as well? So I haven't really noticed that. Let me just see if I can get my click assignment. Let's see if I could create it just quickly here. Let me see if I find a MIDI cable for my choice OS controller. Bear with me for a second. Okay, so I have my controller hooked up, and I'll just configure this quickly. I think my one little USB port thing isn't working for my switcher. So I haven't noticed any changes with that. Sorry, my hub isn't functioning as expected. Let me see if I can reset it. I have a USB hub that switches between 3 different computers. So I could share devices, but let me see if it's... doesn't want to cooperate today with that. But I haven't noticed any assignment changes that worked. I was just doing some mixing on my personal computer, and none of my assignments had changed with that. All right, we have Samson Strike checking in from Austria. Thanks for joining us again. All right, Michael Pierce is offered his soup for the season. Asparagus butter, asparagus fried for a few minutes, shallots, 2 handfuls of spinach, vegetable stock, and boil. Blitz blend, sourdough croutons, and Parmesan pecorino. So sounds like a good soup. Thanks, Michael Pierce, for sharing that. All right. So I see question. Hi, how can I bind a shortcut to reset all overloads in my project? By switching plugins, I always get some overload. Please help. So I'm not sure if it's processing overloads. Or if you're just getting an overload message, or if it's overloads with, so I'm not sure if it's like in the mix console, if you see that there, but if you see it in the mix console, you could come over here and it's a reset meters. So if we just do a quick search, so I think we could just, let's see if it's under, yeah. So if you go to under the mixer, you could do meters reset. So if it's that type of overload, like in the meters here, then you could do that. But if it's going to be just a, plugins that are causing CPU overloads, then that may not be something you could do with a keyboard shortcut, other than perhaps, activating constrained delay compensation to bypass some of the heavier plugins. Okay, so we have a question. Hey, Greg, some of the Hallian instruments I bought while on 11 still need a dongle. Is there a way to transfer them to the new licensing system? So eventually they will be kind of transitioned over, but currently most of them aren't. It's a work in progress of titles being implemented with the new licensing system. So I think the new version of Nuendo will be the next one to go with the new licensing system. And then as other programs are released, at that point, they'll be kind of transitioned, but currently there isn't a way to kind of automatically have those be assigned to the new licensing system. All right, we have Jeff Zabelski checking in from Chico, California. Thanks for being a part of the live stream today. All right, so we see from Sven Isaacson, before I installed a new drive, I deactivated Dorico SE. When I opened the activation manager on a new drive, Dorico was activated. Does this mean that I lost an install? So I don't think so, but you could check if you go to accounts.steinberg.net, that you could see how many activations are currently active there. But I think you're okay. Yeah, so I think if we come over here, and I think if we go to let's say even if we go to my Steinberg, that once you come over here, maybe you go to my profile, that I think if you go to, there's, so you could say show Steinberg licensing based products. And then you could kind of see your different functions there. So I have mine on a different account. So try going there to your My Steinberg profile, and I think you could see the active status. All right. All right, so we see from Richard James that I magically fixed his effects not showing, external effects not showing up in an effects track. So all right, so you see, hey Greg, would Steinberg add the Apple spatial renderer with the head tracking to Cubase Nuendo, or is Apple going to keep it exclusive to Logic Pro to get people to buy the M1 Max Studio? It looks so. I think, you know, I've heard discussion that there's, you know, they're exploring or doing research on a product, you know, but I'm not sure if it's exactly the same codec that's kind of universally used for Dolby Atmos, you know, so. So I think that there might be investigations, but I don't think anything is been, you know, nothing's been publicly announced, but it's obviously something that we would love, you know, I think that Steinberg would want to offer to people as well. Okay, so we see, Greg, can you show in Score Editor input via MIDI keyboard? Okay, so we just do a new project here. So my MIDI keyboard isn't necessarily working, but we'll take a look at it here. I'll open up my virtual MIDI keyboard. So we'll add an instrument track. Okay, so, you know, obviously if you just record directly into the score editor, we can, you know, Cubase will interpret the performance, but I'm going to just open up my virtual keyboard here. And let's say I now wanted to play in, you know, so if we wanted to do even step input, we could activate our step input here and say, okay, I just want to put in quarter notes. So I could just say, so we'll double click and let me just switch octaves here on my keyboard. So now that I've just kind of can come directly here where I wanted to input from chords, we could switch our rhythmic value here. So if we just say, okay, let's just put in eighth notes. So now as we wanted to at this point, we could just put in your different notation using kind of a keyboard. So if you want to do it by a step entry, or if you wanted to actually just, record and then capture it, and then you can see it in the score editor as well. See a further comment on Apple Spatial Audio. It says, as of right now, you can't use an Apple Spatial Audio renderer. Even if you spent $52,000 in a Mac Pro, you need the latest operating system to use it with M1. So, yeah. All right, so we have Benny or Dane from Sweden says hi. So thanks for joining. All right, my chat field jumped on me, so I think I'm... Okay, so we have a question. Every time I open up the mixer in standalone mode with a shortcut, command goes back to the track. Some random track is minimized. I hate that. What's going on? So let me just open up kind of a project here. Just find one that has some different, more tracks in it. All right, so let's say all right, so as we all right, so when I hit F3 to go to the mixer, doesn't seem like any of the tracks. So we look at all the tracks here. They're all about the same height. And then when I hit F3, go to the full screen mixer, no tracks have been minimized with that. So make sure that if you're, I'm not sure if you're hitting F3 to actually have the mixer open up, or if it's with a different shortcut. Like sometimes if you hit Z, you could, minimize tracks that way. But if it's just F3, and another thing to check is just to make sure that that keyboard shortcut didn't get, check if you hit F3 to open up the mixer. When you come here, just say, okay, hit F3, and then you could see if there's a chance and possibility that that keyboard shortcut is assigned to multiple functions. But, generally opening up just the mix console is not going to change any sizes of tracks. So let me know if you check your, if that is happening, or if you're doing it from maybe a workspace, something like that. All right, and we see Theodore from London. Thanks for joining us. Okay. All right. So I just see a question. Is there any vertical snap for automation points? All right. So let's say if we want it to come here. So generally, when we snap an event, it's going to be snapped in time, to a musical grid, whereas, for the actual value here for automation. So, when you come here, if you wanted to adjust kind of the automation value here, it's not going to automatically snap, So again, we could think of time. Snap is being kind of, based upon some type of rhythmic or timing grid. Whereas if we wanted to automatically snap, if we wanted to snap vertically, if I'm understanding correctly, like if we wanted this to be at exactly, instead of minus 20.5, you could just say, go to the info line and type minus 20 and do it like that. But generally, snapping kind of is snapping to a time grid. And so that may not be applicable for the automation value. So let me know if I understood correctly. All right. So you say, how do I define which is the channel for a MIDI remote control slider? Channel seems to always be the stereo out. Channels 2 and onwards don't affect any of the mixer channels. I'm using the Akai MIDI mix. So, when we go to your MIDI setup, let's say we go to the mapping parameters, you could actually just choose for it to be the selected track. So instead of, so what you want it to be, instead of maybe to a particular channel, or if it's set to a quick control, you want it to be maybe, the selected track volume, and then whatever track you're on, the selected track, that particular parameter is going to control volume for that particular track. So try that and see if that makes sense. So, maybe you had it defined to a particular track and it's automatically doing that. But if we defined the slider to be, for volume on the selected track, maybe that would do the trick for you. All right, so we see Best Korean Jesus is from San Diego has made the live stream. So thanks for joining us. Hope you're doing well. All right, so we see from Jeff Sabelski just saying, oboe, one track, same events recorded for full orchestra. First track, primary choices. Second, alternate takes, phrasing, timbre, for example. Second choices are muted between the two tracks. AFF for Pro Tools. So if you wanted to, you could do that. But, so if you wanted to mute the tracks, so let's say, okay, I want to give this as, take one or an alternate take, so often if it's, the the AAF file won't necessarily, I don't think it's going to translate if the event is muted or not. So what I would do is just clearly label, tracks here. If you're passing on to another engineer or producer who's going to make the decisions, I would just have them automatically play, just take the audio file names and the track names and say, primary idea, alternate takes, and make it easy for the engineer. So I think if you mute it, it may not actually translate over, but just give them two separate files. Okay, so we see from Let's see, for Michael Pierce, question, is there a quick way other than event start to paste things so the end of the event snaps to the cursor position? So I think when we come, what you could do is maybe, so say if I wanted this event to, let's say if we copy and let's say paste the event and we wanted this to come, so and we wanted the end of the event to go to the cursor position. So maybe we'll make a macro. So if we come here, let's go to key commands. And we'll do this new, and we'll say paste to selection end. We'll see if this works. All right, so we're going to add a new command. And here we're just going to okay, so I'll select that, and I think we could say move events, event ends to cursor. So let's add that. Okay, so let's say my cursor is here and I want to, let's say, copy. I have this event copied. Now we'll paste to selection end. So if you make a macro like that, Michael, let me know if that works, because, and again, the macro would just be when we come over to key commands. So I just chose to do a paste to selection end. So I just did edit paste and then edit moves events to the cursor. So it moves the end of the event to the cursor. So if we just have this copied, so I'll just kind of, we'll start this. I'm going to copy this particular event. And I want it to paste on this track, but I want the end of the event to go to the cursor. At that point, we'll run the macro. And it'll be paste to selection end. And then that should do it. So let me know if that works for you, Michael Pierce. And I see just kind of a further clarification on Jeff Sabelski's question on the 2 tracks for the engineer. So I would, for the engineer, again, I'm not sure if the mutes would, would actually be carried over in an AAF file, or if you save it as a WAV file. But I would just put, mute in the name of the track or in the name of the file, and that way, I'm sure the engineer will love you for doing that. There's nothing, that engineers love than getting 52 lead vocal tracks with no notes on it, where someone else could make the decision and they have to go through them all. But I would just write the word, mute, alternate takes, play muted, something like that. And I'm sure the engineer will appreciate you for that. Okay, so we have a question. If I have bad takes in a multi-lanes drum recording and I delete, does lanes on every tracks to make it easier. So can it mess up something when I do? Should I just leave them alone? I would tend to leave them alone unless you're know that you're very tight on hard drive space. Like I come from kind of the school of always be recording when, someone's doing stuff, and you may want to have different options. I was just, hanging out last month with my friend who's a wonderful engineer, Gary Pachoza, who's worked with, Nickel Creek and Alison Krauss and Dolly Parton, and he just records everything all the time in different mics that the artists don't know is open, and he just always keeps it just to have a lot of options during mixing and editing processes. Okay, so we have a question. Greg, is there a way to use the logical editor to change the state inactive on tracks so that plugins don't consume resources after bouncing the processed audio to a track? Yeah, and obviously you could bounce how you bounce the audio to a particular track is also, can just do that. So if you do even just a standard render in place, so let's say on this, I'm going to have just the guitars. Let's say if we are listening to we got one name. We're gonna get it right. So let's say if I have my guitar here, and this is just going through the VST amp rack. So let's say if we bypass this. So if you wanted to, just take that particular selection and say, when we render in place, you could just say, okay, let's go to the render settings. And, if we have the track selected, we could, and you get different options if the event or the track is selected. So let's say if I just want it to come to the track and we go to render in place, that at this point we could just disable the source tracks. So you could render it and then disable the source tracks just like that. So now as soon as you would, as soon as we come over here, you could just render the particular track and the source track will become, basically just disabled. So you could do it kind of like that. But if you wanted to do it from the project logical editor, you could, take selected tracks and disable selected tracks. So if you wanted to say, I wanted to disable all selected tracks here, we'll say our media type. And we could just say our container type is equal to tracks, and our we'll say the property is the event is set to selected, and then what we want to do is to come over here and to disable. Let's see. I think we could disable it in here. Okay, so what we could do is I know, sorry, my brain cramp. So I'm gonna remove this, but then I'll just come over here, and I think if we choose enable/disable track. So now at this point, I'm gonna take all the tracks that are selected and disable them. So I could just come right there and do that with the project logical editor. So I'll just reread. Yeah, so you could just do it like that. So if you just select the particular tracks, and let me just undo it. So let me know. So you could select like, the tracks are selected or tracks, and then just choose to enable, disable tracks. But you could also, if you're doing like a render in place, you could choose to disable the tracks if you have the tracks selected as part of the render in place as well. Okay, so we have a question from Joshua. It says, Arc Conductor can change articulation in Cubase, but how would you change the positions using the Spitfire player, for instance, BBC SO Pro? So I don't have any of the Spitfire libraries, but if the positions are set up as something that's done with a key switch, so I'm not sure. So if I come over to, let's go to a different project here. So it really depends on if the articulations can be used to switch the actual mic positions or how the mic positions can be switched. Sometimes it may be just a MIDI CC message. So it's, and you could program a particular, expression map. So let's say if we go to our expression map setup and we want to look at violin 1, so we could have like the articulations, but if there are key switches or if you wanted to come over and take not just note on messages, but controller messages, if that's used to switch the different mic positions, you could just have those as different articulations as well. So you can say, okay, it needs to be a controller, and it needs to be, let's say, controller 12, and at, I want the mic controller 12 at position 24 will set to this mic position, maybe 36 will set it to another mic position. So you could do some different things like that as well. So it depends on, if it receives, if it will switch, and I don't have any of the Spitfire libraries, if it will switch based on the mic position based on MIDI CC, or if it does it on MIDI note messages, but you should be able to do it from, using either way, or if there's a different method that they use. But, most MIDI messages will be able to be controlled through either MIDI CC messages or doing it through the note expressions if you have it set up. Okay, so we have a question. Hi, Greg. Is there a way to cut out part of a song and whatever is behind the part automatically jumps into the space which was taken out instead of moving? I guess it says mowing. I guess moving everything manually. So let me just take a look here. I think maybe we can do a quick project to show this. Let me see. Yeah. Take a look at this one. Okay, so let's say I have multiple takes here on this. So let's say when I select an area that let's say I split this particular area. So we're on take one, take one, take one. And let's say I delete that. So what I would do is, if you want it, instead of to delete the event on the project window, is maybe go to the bottom center, and then you could actually just kind of switch between the different takes here. So if you delete it, if you delete the event on a project window, it's going to delete, you know, all of the events. But if you just kind of go to the bottom here, in the bottom center, you could see all different alternate takes just kind of laid out for you. And if you're doing this, you know, comping, you could just use the comp tool if there are multiple parts, and so whatever is behind. And I think that you could also, or maybe, let's see if there's, you know, so I'm not sure if you need to delete what was there, or you just wanted to quickly delete it to get something else. But if you just wanted to get a different take, you know, go to the bottom here, the bottom center, and then you could switch between them. All right, so just see, how do I use a Cubase 9.5 file in Cubase 11? It says I want to use drum tracks from Cubase 9.5 and they are not being imported. When I open in 11, they are missing. So, you know, the file formats are still the same between the two projects, you know, between the two different versions. So there shouldn't be anything that you need to do, but, you know, check to see if it's maybe being routed to a plugin that doesn't work in Cubase 11. Maybe it's a 32-bit plugin. I think that it stopped before 9.5, but make sure that it's a plugin that's actually part of Cubase 11, or, you know, I don't know if you're importing tracks from project, but see if you have that particular plugin in both versions that the drum tracks are being routed to. But, you know, it should have the data regardless. You could also try to just come over here and say import tracks from project, and select the particular project here, and then just say, okay, I wanted to import all of these drum tracks. But you know, make sure that if it's, I'm not sure if it's MIDI drums or audio drums, but it should be able to automatically be carried over. And one other thing that could be is maybe like the, you know, the project in 9.5 has the drums stored in a, if it's audio files, maybe in a different location. So so try those things. But the projects, you know, like I'm opening up, you know, I'll open up a project from, this is from Cubase 7, this project. And, you know, like I'll have a couple plugins missing, like Groove Agent 1's migrated to there, but everything will play back. So that's from Cubase 7 to Cubase 12. And I could load up a Cubase, you know, SX1. So. Okay, so we have a question. Can I retrieve a file in a pool back into my main track? So let's say if this is, you know, if we have an audio file that's been erased. So let's say I wanted to take my lead vocals here and erase it. And if we go to our pool window, so let's say if we want to go to, let's see, you know, but any of, we can see that this will look for files that aren't being used. So we just see if we have. But any of the files here, all you'd have to do is, so it's probably this one, just drag it directly back into the project from the pool. So you should be able to drag it right back in. All right, so we have from Best Korean Jesus just saying, anyone else having issues with the ADM not showing a renderer? I'd love to see the configuration is needed. All right, so let's say first thing you want to do is make sure that your project is set to 48K. That's what's going to be needed for Atmos. So if we go to your, let's do a new project. And let's go to our project setup, which you get to open hitting Shift plus S. Let's make sure your project's at 48K. You want to go to your audio interface and make sure the buffer is set to 512. So we'll come over here. So make sure your buffer is set to 512. All right. And now we will come over. And we'll do our ADM authoring. So we'll go to our setup assistant. We'll say, okay, we're going to do 714, and we could just have our bed configuration to 712 and hit OK. And then we can see that the renderer's been automatically added. Let's say if we add a number of audio tracks. You know, at this point, we could now say, okay, I want to take these particular files and we'll have our bed. And we could also now, once we're in our ADM authoring setup, we can just say under functions, we can say add objects from the selected. So we'll have our bed here, and then we could have our objects. And as we go in, and this is kind of the beauty of how Cubase kind of does it, you can now just come directly over here, and if we can put our panner in object or bed mode, and as we do this, we can now pan this particular object accordingly. So we can now just kind of come directly over here and do our panning. That's really all you have to do to kind of get it set up from scratch. But if you're not working at 48K or your buffer is not set to 512, then that could be causing problems. All right, so see Jeff Sabelski is just mentioning his i5 with 64 gigs of RAM is doing great on a large orchestral piece with 500 plus audio events and about 30 tracks with VST instruments with Howie and Sonic. RAM usage is about 38 gigs, so that's great. See, Jeff Spelsky's mentioned he's found the Control F keyboard shortcut by accident. So if you're in a large template, you could just come over here and say, and this will open up kind of the, where you could see the, all of the tracks in your project. So you could search for tracks by name. So just in case you didn't know that. Thanks, Jeff, for pointing that out for the benefit of others. Okay, so we have a question. How can I save the device port connections for the external effect in audio connections, external effect window? So it's a little different, but what you could do is if we come over here, let's say we have the external effect is you could come over here and you could call it a favorite, and then that will maintain kind of, and that way you could load up different favorites that are maybe patched into the same audio IO. So, but that will preserve your audio IO settings right there. So try the selecting favorites, and then you could add a favorite. All right, so you see further clarification from Samson Strike about the reset overload. So is there a workaround to reset CPU disk overloads? Thanks very much. So I think I'm not sure if there's a keyboard shortcut for it, but one thing you could do on the studio setup is, maybe if we go to the audio system and click reset, I'm not sure if that is keyboard shortcuttable or drivable, but you could try just doing the reset devices. But if your situation is that the project is too much, as soon as you hit play again, it may just go into so it may just immediately have the same exact situation. So so it's probably not the CPU disk overload message that's annoying, that's causing the problem. It's the message that, it's the fact that you're using too much CPU. So you may have to freeze tracks or render in place and do some other stuff. All right, so I see Benny saying I missed him again. So I don't think I saw a question, but if you want to, sorry, I don't think I missed any questions. I'm sorry, it's not intentional, but sorry if I missed you. See if I just scroll back. But Benny, if you want to send me a quick email right now to clubcubase@steinberg.de. I seem to remember maybe we had this before where maybe the comments weren't coming in the chat for some reason. So, but if you want to email me, I'll try to keep an eye out for that. All right, so I just see a question. Hey friends, do you know why I don't have Dolby Atmos in my Cubase 12 Pro? So make sure that you get the 12.01, which was just released on Wednesday. And that will have the Atmos, and you could see if you go to your project menu and you see ADM authoring for Dolby Atmos, then you know that you have it. All right, so I just see from Joshua just asking, anyone else have an ASIO version 2 on PC that doesn't keep the sound open but prefers to be exclusive to either web browsing or anything else, but that but what you just switched to, so obviously make sure one of the things is when you go to your studio setup here, you can see the release ASIO driver when application is in background. Sometimes if you're using an onboard audio interface to do this, some don't like to give up some if they are set to like an external clock. And if you go from your DAW in one sample rate to a web browser playing in a different sample rate, that could cause problems, and it may not switch sample rates, it may not play. So that could be something else. And sometimes you could go into like, deep little paths within the sound card for it to release the driver when it's, when you go between different programs as well. So, but generally just the release ASIO driver in background will do the trick. All right. So I just see, hey, Greg. Hi, Greg. What is the best way? The question: what is the best way to resolve a corrupted file? These happens when I open my file on my laptop and then open it on my PC. What are the causes of this happening? So most corrupt files that I've kind of experienced where maybe you have a plugin on one system or that's not on the other system or something that's referencing that. And, maybe once you saved it in a different state, if the plugins weren't exactly the same, that could maybe cause a corrupted file. But if you wanted to send me a corrupted file, I'd be happy to kind of pass it along to the Steinberg developers. All right, so I got Benny's question via email. Thank you, Benny. It says, hello, I need help with the setup in Cubase 12 Pro MIDI setup. I want to scroll back and forward in a project with my big knob on my Keylab 61. I only find left or right. So many controllers, you have to, so it's going to be two separate functions. So many MIDI controllers don't separate moving one direction and moving another direction. They only kind of treat it as one value. So a lot of controllers that have kind of like a jog wheel. So, but we'll come over here. Let's say, let's go to like our MIDI remote mapping. So let's say if we have, because it's combining two functions, but most of the knobs only transmit one function. So let's see. I think if we come over here to key commands, we'll see that we'll have, I think if we go under maybe transport, so, and we have like two different functions here. I think you could use jog left or jog right. So you could use one of the functions to jog to the left or jog to the right, but there's a good chance that on your controller that's not going to be sending different MIDI messages for different directions that you move the knob. If it does, you just want to assign the MIDI message when it moves to the right. You could have it jog right. When you move the knob to the left, jog left. So again, most, the vast majority of MIDI controllers, don't transmit multiple messages. There's a chance that yours does, like, CC121 does it great. But a lot of kind of standard generic, MIDI controls only transmit one MIDI message. And that's why, you spend more on some other ones. All right. Okay, so we see from Cy or C, Rollinson, thanks for the MIDI clip trim macro in the last video. Worked a treat. It's 2 thumbs up. That's great. Glad it worked out. Yeah, there could be a different approach to that, but that seemed to work. All right, so I just see, hi Greg, question. Recently I took advantage of the Lo-Fi Piano free pack running Cubase 12 Pro, Windows 11. I noticed that the license change, I need the dongle to use this. Any way to change this, please? So, I think if it's still a free pack, you may be able to actually, I think that that's going to work as a soft e-license and on a USB e-licenser. One thing that you could try, and I'm not sure if this would work, is to download it. And maybe if you created a different My Steinberg account, if it's a free thing, download it and install it using the soft e-licenser. And then it's not going to be tied to your USB e-licenser. So you can move a soft e-license to a USB e-licenser, but you can't move a USB e-license back to a soft e-license. So that may be a workaround, but, hopefully we'll see these, the different instruments get kind of transitioned to the new licensing system. So it's a big process. All right, so we have a question. Why do I get the message the tracks in this folder are not completely in sync? Group editing could fail. How do I fix that? So it's just letting you know that, like ideally for a lot of group editing, like if you're doing drum quantizing, multi-track drum quantizing, stuff like that, that what you want to do is to have, the audio files be the same length. And I get this message on some projects, and often you could just ignore it. So it's just kind of a warning that if it's seeing different length audio files and you're doing group editing, that, there could be consequences. 9 times out of 10, you could ignore it if you know that it's kind of in the ballpark, but it's just kind of, giving you a warning message. So often you could go ahead and do your group editing without any consequences. So I think it's, most of the time you could ignore it. All right, so I just see a question. I can't find where to download the 12.01 Cubase 12 update. Anyone know where to look for it? So just go to the Steinberg Download Assistant and click on Cubase 12, and you'll see the 12.01 update there. So we see a question. Hi, Greg. Is Steinberg planning a new control surface for Cubase? So I've seen some discussions on it, but nothing that's kind of imminent. And generally we do that in conjunction with Yamaha. So they're the ones who designed like in conjunction with Steinberg, and they do the manufacturing for like, the former CC 121 or the Nuage. So you could just simply, so it's kind of done in conjunction with Yamaha since they have the hardware expertise. So I know I've seen some stuff on roadmaps, but nothing that we could, that's at a state that could be talked about. All right, just reading through comments. All right, so we see question. I started a project without saving it initially, and it saved files to untitled. After saving the project in a new location, it still seems to save things in the untitled folder. Why is that? So when we do a project, we define a project folder. So, so when we start a new project, we could have it go to an untitled project folder. And I think since version 11, the default state is it prompts you for project location. So at that point, all of the files as you record audio are going to go into that folder. Where you save the project file to, and the project file is a reference to where the audio files are, what the MIDI information is, what the automation, what plugins are used, what settings for the plugins. That could be stored and saved independently of the project location. Ideally, you'd want to save the project location, save the project into the same folder as the project location. Many people do a save as, and they save the project file, which is kind of referencing all the plugins and media at a different location. But, the audio files are still going to be present, and all of the files that make up that project will still be, present in the same folder. So if you wanted to move everything to a new folder, consider using the backup project, and then that will create a new folder, a new project. It'll ask you a name if you want to clean up unused audio files. So the project file can be, ideally you want it in the same folder as the project folder. Sometimes people will save it in a different location, and the two files, the file that is telling, Cubase where to look for all the files cannot be in the same folder, or is, sometimes not in the same folder. Ideally, you want it in the same folder so that it knows where to find the audio files in the default location. So doing a save as just saves the project location, and it doesn't move any of the content or media files associated with that project. All right. All right, so we see, Greg, many lanes of stacked recording, slicing, and choosing completed. Is there a macro to eliminate the non-used takes with the logical editor? I did like making tracks from lanes, then consolidating. So, what you could do is often what I do in a situation like this, if we have lots of edits. Let me see if I may have a hot mess project that I could, let's see if I have one on here that I could share. Maybe I'll show process of. Okay, so I'll do one on the so often, let me just see if I have. Okay, so let's say we have this, and let's say I've done, it's not a good example of it, but, all right, so let's say I've done 100 edits on this particular file here, and no one really wants all of the edits that I've done. So often what I will do is, let's say I have all of these edits, and I don't need to hand a bunch of, independent audio files that, will be hard for someone else who's, perhaps using a different program if they're not smart enough to be running Cubase, to be, to have a hard time doing. So what I would often do is just come here, and I would often just do you could do a render in place. and that would give you like one audio file that could be created. Another method that I often do, just a quick thing, is I will duplicate the version, and then I will select all the events here and go to audio to bounce selection, and we'll replace the event. So I could have this file as all of my edits and this file as my actual like file that I'm going to pass along. And then at that point, we could choose to minimize files, like when we do, or if you just go to your media and choose to prepare archive and the projects that aren't being used in the folder. And this may work better if you do like just a render in place. So let's say if I wanted now to switch back to my original edits, and I could come over here and just render in place. So if we come and we'll say, okay, I just want this to render in place. So, and then we chose to replace the events. And then at that point, we could, in the project, just come over to media and remove the unused media. And then, you know, that way everyone could have kind of just the, you know, just the one file, and you don't have to worry about necessarily having, you know, all of the, you know, all of the individual ingredients that make up the track. And then you could just have the one kind of finished track. And then if you wanted to, you know, just go back, and let's say if we undid that, but, you know, working with track versions to choose different edits is something that I do quite a lot as well. So this is some techniques, Jeff. All right, so let's go back to, we see question, why does my group editing don't work? I do exactly as you said, but my track just won't follow my first selected track. So let's go ahead and jump back. Okay, so let me just go ahead and I think, so I'm going to create, let's say, lanes from these. All right, so if you have those in lanes, I'll duplicate a version. Let's duplicate a version. All right, and now I'm going to convert these all to lanes. Okay, so I'm just going to open up all the lanes here. Okay, hide my lower zone. So let's put this into group edits on the folder. And then I'm just going to use the comp tool here. And we can see that that's going to be applied to all of the different tracks. So make sure that, like in this mode, that you're using the comp tool. And let's see if we put on phase coherency, if that makes any difference. It seems to be fine. So, but that seems to work. So make sure that all of the lanes are visible when you do that. And then, so I think they may all need to be visible for it to take effect, but give that a try. All right, I think Jeff Zabelsky is asking for ice cream, so. All right, we see Graham Witcher on the live stream, so thanks for joining us today. and said he was late because he was sidetracked recording a Verve piano onto a track. We're just glad he could be a part of the live stream today. All right, so Jazz Dude wants everyone, if you like the Hangout, to subscribe and hit the like button. Just reading through comments. Thanks for all the great questions. All right, so just see a comment from Best Green Jesus says, all right, I have to do all sorts of workarounds to get this to work. Should I submit a ticket plus a video? Yeah, so I'm just seeing if I can scroll back if I missed a question. I think the last question I had was about the setting up Dolby Atmos from you, if memory serves. Let me just see. I'll scroll back a bit. So, but yeah, if I missed something, maybe you could still ask it in the comments. But if you want to send me a video, that'd be helpful as well. Okay, so I just see a question. I was asking about rearranging song, i.e., if I have verse 1 chorus and verse 2, I want to cut the chorus out. Is there any way to get the verse 2 to move back automatically instead of moving it manually? Okay, so I think sorry for misunderstanding, but let me just come here and we'll jump back. So yeah, we can do this quite easily. So really all you have to do is, let's say, okay, I wanted to get rid of like a portion of the song. We could hold down the control. I think it's control plus shift with the range selection tool. So I'll just make this a little bigger here. So when we go to the top, and that will globally select the range. So if I wanted to get rid of that, now we could just come over to range. And then if we choose to cut time, that will then knock all the other events over. So let's say if we split this, and I'll just color it like these events afterward, so it's easier to see. So again, if you just wanted to, and if you have markers set up, you could also just double click with the range tool in the marker area. But if we just say, okay, I want to control plus shift. So let's say now, and if I want to do it on selected tracks, so let me just, sorry. So now when I do this, let's say I want to get rid of that, just shift plus. We just. So take this, and then I think it's just Control or Command plus Shift X, and then those events will automatically just move directly over. And you could access that. So once you have the range selected, Control or Command plus Shift plus X, and then that will just move it over, or you could just access that function directly from the range tool. So let me know if that makes sense. So we cut a verse out and not have empty space. And the following contents can just simply kind of move over to the left to fill in the time. All right, so we see a question. It seems like the new FX modulator can only have one MIDI trigger module at a time. Is that correct? Or am I missing something? That seems very limiting. So I think it's one MIDI trigger per instance of it. So, but you could also just have, create MIDI events and have those serve as a sidechain input as well pretty easily for other modules. All right, so we see from James Daly a question, did I hear there's a Cubase 12 update? If so, I would download it from the download assistant. Yeah, so you get it directly from the download assistant. It's released on Wednesday. All right, so we see, hi Greg, can you tell me where I can find a list of what content belongs to Groove Agent SE and Groove Agent 5? I have both, but it seems that I've lost some sound and groove libraries. Thank you. All right, so. All right, so I'll just open up the big Groove Agent. Okay, so when we go to libraries, so when we come over here, we could see some of these are going to be extra. So I think the rock with the SE version that you're going to get the Groove Agent 1 kits. You're going to get the Studio SE kit as well as the Kit SE. So, and Beat Agent kits. What the full version of Groove Agent will include is going to be rock, the studio percussion in addition to the SE kits, and you'll see the full kit as well, and Beat Agent kits. So the Alan Morgan signature drums that may come, I believe that's also included with SE. But some of the ones that are like the Beat Essentials, Fusion Essentials, Prime Cut, Rock Essentials, I think the Vintage kit is also part of the full Groove Agent. And I see where we had the Simon Phillips. Those laser beams is going to be included with SE as well. And I think Raw Power is also included with SE. So. All right, reading through more comments here. Thanks for all the great questions. All right, so it's to see, hi Greg, just wondering if you could tell me how to change the color in the audio waveform in the sample editor moment. It is white rather than black. Okay, so it's... So when I do this, it's going to, like, as I double click here, it's actually colorizing. So let's say if we do auto colors, let's take a look. If we do, so we could do like the event color. So when I go to blue here, it's blue. And I don't think it's going to matter if we do pitch, but currently it's going to follow kind of the color of the event. So if I go to a red part, so it could be just what colors you have selected here, like for the tracks that's going to be carried over. Let's see if we just do auto, if that makes a difference. But here we could see, so maybe it's just the colors of the events that you're utilizing, but it seems to carry the waveform color, seems to carry over directly from whatever the event color is in the sample editor for me. Okay. All right. So we have a question. So can you do a quick set of Dolby Atmos setup as well as how to export it using the control room? So let's say if I wanted to take this project that was mixed in stereo and get it configured for Atmos, and one of the things that we could do is just kind of to simplify this process. And if you've had to do it in other programs or even in Nuendo 11, this setup assistant is, very appreciated. Very appreciated. So if we come here, we can say, let's go to our setup assistant. Again, we want to probably have your main mix configuration as 714, and we'll add our 712 bed, and we'll route all the tracks to the bed channel to start with. So that does like so much of the routing directly there. Now, once we're here, we could just choose to do, if most people will want to do a binaural down mix so that you could listen to it with headphones. And that's really kind of all of, where it used to be very complex in the control room. Now we could just do it, just directly that easily. Then if we wanted to add objects, from tracks, we go to the functions, and then we could just simply add the different objects that would be put onto the bed. So that's, the simplicity of it. I think, Steinberg did a great job with kind of making that much more accessible to people. There's a lot of confusion before. All right, so just a question about the go to the download assistant about where to find a 12.01. So we'll show it to you. So if you just actually click right on the Cubase, you'll just see when we go to Cubase Pro 12, you'll see the Cubase 12.0.1. So you could just install that directly. So. So just see what is the cost of Cubase Pro. So I'm not sure what country you're in. So I know in the US it sells for, like, the map price is roughly $5.79. But if you go to the Steinberg online shop in your country, or look on a dealer website, you could probably see the price for Cubase 12. So I don't know what country you're based in. So I don't want to just assume. But you could check on the Steinberg online shop, and that should have the price there. All right, so I just see from question, hi Greg, are you enjoying Atmos? So I love doing surround stuff. So I've been a big fan for, I've had like surround sound in my studio since 2000, 2001, something like that. So I was like in the first wave of it. I was, really hopeful that it was going to take off and be kind of the new delivery format. And I loved, being able, like, I remember at an AES show, sneaking into the Acura car with the L's surround system, being snuck in by Elliot Shiner so that, we could listen to 5.1 in a car, which is, so great. So I'm hoping Atmos and surround sound will take off. So, but I enjoy mixing in surround sound and doing a lot of surround work. All right. So I just see from Best Screen Jesus, just saying I've had multiple interfaces to get Dolby Atmos renderer and have the same issue. Are there prerequisites for audio connections? Maybe I don't have the right config there. So it should be, pretty straightforward. 48K. You want to just, set up your 7.14 output instead of 512 buffer. So. Okay, and then so while we're here, can you do a quick Dolby Atmos as well as how you export it using the control room? So once we have, the, let's say we come over here to our project, let's say we're still set up, and at that point, all you'd have to do is click on Export ADM file, and that is the information that would have all of the metadata for all of the for the surround information, and that would be automatically kind of translated to whatever monitoring environment there. So all you had to do is just click on from the Dolby Atmos renderer, just click on to export the ADM file. All right, so we see question, as Nuendo 12 will have the option to change the selected clip state, red outline, and color contrast. So we have this in Cubase as well. So I think that basically what that is doing is we just have the option here. So when an event is selected, that the colors will get kind of inverted. So in Nuendo, we had the option of doing it, but it would only show kind of the boundaries, like the part boundaries. And a lot of people were kind of confused and that it wasn't, excuse me, that wasn't obvious when an event was selected. So I think instead of going to, and I think it's kind of a the previous selection in Nuendo was hard to tell what was selected. It was very subtle, and most people wanted it to be like Cubase. So it was a lot of Nuendo users wanting the event selection to function like Cubase, as opposed to Cubase users wanting the event selection to be less obvious and more subtle. So I don't think we'll see the option of the less obvious, more subtle selection mode. I think most Nuendo users will activate that preference too, so that the event selection it looks and functions like Cubase. All right, wonderful to see Gareth on the live stream. All right, and we have John Walker checking in from Cosmos Original Records. Thanks for joining us. All right, so see, Uno Memento is going to rest. He has a session with 120 singers coming in tomorrow. Good luck with the sessions. All right. All right, wonderful to see Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. All right, so we see that we got the question from about the arranging. So sorry for misunderstanding that at first. And we see Benny's just saying, "I just love this live stream." So. All right. So I just see, could you let us know how we can use the listen function in full screen key editor? Doesn't seem to work. All right. So let me just go to different project here real quick. Okay, so let's say if I'm so I think I did is I made a macro. So when we go into like the listen mode, so when we go into the listen mode, often what you have to do is it could depend upon the focus of what's going on. So if I wanted to take my drums, you know, we could solo. And if I wanted to have it go into listen mode so I could still hear. So let's say I have this in full screen. So what I'm going to do is create just a macro. Sorry, let me just get the... Let's see if I could just into full screen mode real quick. Hang on. All right. Just try reverting the project here real quick. Hang on. Okay, so now we'll come here, we're playing. So I just created a macro to come over here. And so if I wanted to take the drums here, and I think just listen from key editor. So that way you could just listen to it in the listen mode. So in the macro that I made is, we'll just take a look at it. So if we just wanted to come over here, we'll get to my key commands. And as we did this, So listen from key editor. So we could just say, and basically what it's going to do is open the mixer. And then we could then enable the listen on the selected channel. And then you could close the mixer. If the mixer's open, I think you could, like if it's on a separate screen, I think you may just set the device mixer twice here and then enable the listen. So that way, but you could kind of play around with a different order there. So that way you could just take whatever the currently selected track is and put it into listen mode. I see Jazz D talking about early like DTS 5.1 CDs. So my favorite is still, I love Alan Parsons' work, but I love Steely Dan Gaucho in 5.1 by Elliot Shiner. That's probably my favorite 5.1 mix. Also check out Chuck Ainley's Brothers in Arms by Dire Straits. So okay, so I know I had some questions that were mailed in. Let me get to those. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. So we're doing okay. Doing okay on time. So let me just jump over. And once again, if you learned something new, make sure you hit the like button. Okay, so we had just a question. So I hope, so it's mailed in. I hope you can help me with this question. How can I use Score to create a lead line on the same single treble staff, create an additional harmony part where they don't interfere with each other? For example, if I wanted to score out the lead line harmony on the same staff for a song where the rhythms are totally different, meaning the lead line could be quarter notes and eighth notes, and the harmony parts are quarter note triplets without interfering with each other. Maybe this score layers at the top right of the screen is where these three layers, one layout layer, one project layer, which is next to the colorize layer. All right, so let's go ahead and take a quick look at how to do this. So we'll do a new project here. Okay, so I'm just going to create kind of a blank part. And we'll look at this in the score editor. Okay, so what you want to do first off is if you want to, we're just going to double click and go into the score settings. And we'll see a polyphonic voice here. So we want this to be set to polyphonic. At this point, we could have 8 voice polyphony for each staff. And if you wanted to do only 2 voices, we could have, 4 voices in the treble clef and 4 in the bass clef here. So now if we wanted to, I'm just going to uncheck these and we'll hit apply. Okay, so now that we have this open, we see over here that we could see our different voices laid out for us directly here. So when I'm in my staff here and I just wanted to put in notes, I can say, okay, I want to put in half notes. And let's say, okay, I just want this to be, and let's just go ahead and zoom in just a little bit here so we can see it a little easier. So we'll zoom in and say, okay, I want this to be, and I'll just come here. So we could just come and directly put in our voices here. So let's say I have these voices and I set those to voice 2. So let's say, okay, I wanted this, and I'll just go ahead and, sorry, I'll just undo that, and we'll just change this pitch to G natural. All right, so now if I wanted to put in a different voice, all I would have to do is click on Insert Voice 1. And now at this point, we'll say, let's just put in quarter notes. And let's make this quarter note triplets for the next part. So now we have two different voices, and if you wanted to select particular notes, you know, we could just come right over here, select these notes, right click, and then you could choose to move to voice 1 or move to voice 2. So we could now just kind of have your separate voices kind of laid out for you directly there. So go to the staff settings, and you want to go to Polyphonic and set this not from single or split, but set it to polyphonic voices. You could set how many voices you want. And then to, you know, as you insert different notes, you could just kind of click directly here to say, I want this in the second voice or the first voice. And as you come over here, you could choose whether you want these to be automatic or to be fixed up and down for stems. So give that a shot. All right, so a question. Is there a way to consolidate volume automation onto a track without rendering the track with all of the inserts? So one quick way of doing this is, let's say if we have an audio file here. So let me just drag a quick loop in. All right, so let's say at this point I have automation on this particular track. Okay, so I'm going to open up my automation lanes here. So let me just... Okay, so I want to do like a really obvious automation bump here. So I'll just say, let's just take that and move it down. All right. So, and let's say as we listen to this, we're going to have, I'll take it off cycle. So quiet, and then back to loud. Okay, so now when we want to, and let's say we have inserts on it. So I will just kind of come directly here, and we'll select this, and let's throw on some obnoxious inserts. So let's do something really obvious. Okay, so let's say now we listen to it. All right, so if we wanted to render this and have the volume change without the actual inserts being applied to it, so let's try Project Logical Editor. So we'll come here, we'll do just a setup. So what I want to do is to actually select so let's say we want to take this particular track, and we'll say the track, we're going to say our container type is set to a track, and we're going to say it is selected. So I'll go to property, and we'll choose property is set to event, track is selected. And what we want to do is take the selected tracks, and we'll go to our track operation, and Inserts bypass will enable inserts to be bypassed, and let's say we even want to do and we could do the same for if we had send effects, or if we had EQs, etc. So we could just come right over here, and then what we want to do is just say we'll render, and I'll just say let's go to render settings. So at this point, we're going to take all the selected tracks and we're going to bypass any of the effects as inserts, EQs, or sends, and then render that. So we'll come over here, it'll prompt us, and we'll say, okay, let's do the channel settings so that we have the fader. So now as we render, we'll just come right over here, and then we could see that our render has been applied without any of the effects. And as we do that, we could see the automation going on, and none of the effects are carried over. And if we, as we do this with like our render settings, if we wanted to copy over the channel settings, so we could do this as part of the channel settings. So as we do our render in place, we could just, if we do try, we could also copy over the channel settings if you wanted to. Or you could, so that's how you could render without the effects and have it automatically do the volume automation and write that data without applying the effects. All right, so we have a question. It says, I have a difficult time to play live, but I heard that when you learn pentatonic scales, that it's easier. Can I put that in Cubase? I know that I can use Cubase live scale setting, that Cubase corrects every mistake to scale. So how do we complete a simple pentatonic melodies? However, maybe I'm out with my idea. So if you wanted to do scale correction, so let's say if we go to an instrument, so we could just use our existing instrument track here. So let's say as we go into our editor, we could just say, okay, I want all these notes to be in D pentatonic. And at that point, everything that you record, you could filter out. So we could say, let's snap the live input, or I only wanted to see pitch editing. And if you wanted different, minor pentatonics, you could choose different scales here. So, and you could even come over if you wanted different modal pentatonic scales, you could create your own scale directly here. So you could use your own, so let's say we go to our pentatonic scale, so we can see that. So it'd be a major pentatonic, and then we could have the blues scale, but we could make your own scales as well. So that way you could have a pentatonic scale, and pentatonic scales are great because they're, if you're a guitar player or a bass player, they're often very much a cliche because they work so well, and you're kind of choosing the 5 strongest notes of the major or minor key. And at that point, that's what you're kind of relying on. And there's a zillion, incredible song hooks that are all based on pentatonic scales. So once you go there, you could just set the scale to, whatever you want, including a pentatonic scale. And then you can do that without worry. Okay, so I just see, hi Greg, I've imported a session from a different program and all the clips events have lined up at the beginning of the project. And how can I import them and have them end up in the timeline where they should be? Okay, so let's say I have this particular file, and I'll just quickly render in place with this, so we could have a timestamp. So let me just. Okay, so let's say I have an audio file, and at this point, it's all of my files started at the very beginning. So if you just go to your edit, select all the files, go to edit, and move to origin. So then that will move the audio files based directly on their timestamp position. So we can say, again, edit, move, and then events to origin. So select all the files, do that, and they'll end up in their correct timestamp position for you. All right. And I think I may have gotten a couple quick questions while we were on the line. So I got Benny's there. Let me see if there's other ones. Okay, just reading through this, see if it's something we can get through. Okay, so I see from something we covered a bit already. All right, let me just go back to our live chat. Thanks for all the wonderful questions. All right, so find my spot in the chat. Okay, so I just see question. So Greg, can you take a minute and load a pad shop and try to use the ARP feature on it? Mine crashes Cubase 12 Pro, so let's give it a shot. Okay, so let's say, just find a quick preset here. All right, so I'll try this. To see if I can find something that's. Okay, so let's come over here. So here's with the Arpeggiator. So let me just try some different ARPs. So it seems to be working. That's my new German techno release right there. So you heard the preview here in the live stream. but that seems to be working. One thing that I would maybe check is to make sure that you did download the latest version of Pad Shop, because there was, I think there's a version update of it, obviously for Cubase 12. So make sure that you're running that. But that seems to be kind of working as expected for me. So. So I just see, Greg, is there a way to record the MIDI data when using the Hallian M guitar? So I think if it's going to basically be, if you wanted the, if you wanted to be like the arpeggios and the strumming patterns, that, those aren't actually what's being generated, and what you're triggering is audio recordings. So there's probably, I don't think that there's going to be a way to take like the actual guitar part that the MIDI information is triggering and have that translate into, into MIDI data to like use a different instrument, because it's not actually responding to the MIDI data. You're using the MIDI data to trigger different conditions for strumming. And what you're doing is actually, it's just triggering different samples of a performance. So if you're trying to get that performance translated over to MIDI, which is really hard to do for guitar, as most of us know, that's probably not going to work in that way, because the plugin itself isn't designed to do that. Okay, so you see FX modulator. Like to know if we can set the pitch shifter to cents instead of semitones or notes. So let's take a look. Okay, so let's. All right, so it looks. So it looks like we could change it. So I see like 3.2 semitones. So let me just see if it's. Let's say I'll just start over again just to make sure that I have this right. All right, so as I move this point up here, so it's 0.81. So it looks like we can adjust. Let me see. So it's not snapping exactly to semitones, but let me see if I hold down. So when you see like the 0.3 points, here in the value for semitones, I think that would. So it looks like it could be adjusted. Like there's 1.62 semitones, 2.01. So it looks like it could be adjusted with the semitones right there. So it may not be where you could set the particular value typed in, but you're not restricted to semitones. All right, I see Gareth will be sending a new project for me to play bass on, so I should have some time over the weekend. So, yep, looking forward to it. See, Gareth is going to steal my melodies, so that's good. I know he did something right, so. All right, so you see from Sable Winters says Yamaha has me uninstalling the older versions, then fresh install compatible Pro. Hope this reveals Groove Agent and Howling Sonic SE3. So, yeah, let me know if it doesn't, Sable. Just feel free to reach out. You can reach me via Facebook or email. I think you have my email as well. See that Pablo is doing a concert tonight. So I just see for Sense, did you press any additional key? No, it's kind of still the same. So as I adjust here, and I think, sometimes you hold down, like here, if I hold down maybe the shift key, that might give you finer control. So, give that a shot as well. So let's see if I move it here, but it seems like with shift, there's a fine control. So let me know if that helps to kind of get the frequency narrowed in. See Gareth describing the project. The next hot mess project is space opera meets surf swing. So we could own the category at the Grammys. All right. All right. So I think I'm at the end of the questions. We'll see if there's any other questions that kind of come in. So let me just I'll wait a couple minutes here, see if other questions kind of migrate in. I want to thank everyone for all the wonderful questions and topics. Hope everyone has learned a new tip or trick. We could end a little early. I know it's a holiday weekend for a lot of people coming up. And if you're celebrating Easter, I hope that you have a wonderful celebration that's calm and peaceful and relaxing and healthy, most importantly. So. All right, seeing some more. All right, so I see, and this may be in FX, maybe in the FX modulator, it'd be great if you could enter the values into the node. So let me see if there's some way of doing that. And let's see if we hold down. And you might be able to do it through like automation or something as well. Let me just see if there's. Trying to remember if there's a way to. Let's see if we have the curve point selected. There may be some sneaky way of doing it, but I try holding down the shift key for the nodes, but I'll pass that along as feedback as well. All right, so see, great comment from Graham Witcher says, I hope we can still be doing this live stream in our 80s. You're never too old to play music, just like a Keith Richards or Mick Jagger. I prefer the Beatles as opposed to the Stones. Well, the question is settled finally from Vince Melmed song. So, all right. right, see if there's... All right, so I see any chance Loop Mash will get an oscilloscope update. It kind of works. So is it Loop Mash or Supervision? So let's see if, just real quick. So if we come over here to inserts, we just jump back to this project real quick. So I think if you kind of zoom in, like if you wanted to use, you know, the scope.
I turn it up, you wouldn't mind. Up until
Maybe I'll just try with a quick synth track here. So let's maybe open up a retro log. All right, and so sneak over to our control room. Let's get to our inserts, and I'll just do a brand new instance. All right, so now if I come here, so, you know, if we just come here, I just put on like spectrum curve, and then as I would change like the oscillator, you could see the, you know, as you change the oscillator here, you could see the different changes appear. So maybe try the spectrum curve editor. All right, we'll see if there's any other quick questions. You see Best Green Jesus just saying, I had no idea the control room had inserts. Wow, thank you. Yeah, it's very useful for a lot of things. All right, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up about 12 minutes early. I want to thank everyone for the wonderful questions. And we will see everyone on Tuesday. So everyone have a wonderful weekend. Please stay safe and healthy. And if you're celebrating Easter, have a lovely time with your family and friends in celebration. So everyone, we'll see everyone on Tuesday. Thank you very much, and goodbye.